Good morning, this is DealBook for Saturday, August 8, 2026. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, and welcome to your weekend briefing. We've got a fascinating mix today, a generational shift happening right under our feet in offices across America, a startup founder who thinks automating a software engineer is too easy and wants to automate the CEO instead, a quiz on the rising role of chiefs of staff, and a roundup of the week's most consequential deals and data points. Let's dive in. For the last decade or so, men have been pairing sneakers with suits and blazers at the office, myself included. It became the default uniform of the post-pandemic return, the Stan Smith, the Common Projects, the sleek Zegna runner. But a shift is underway, and it's not subtle. Loafers and traditional dress shoes are officially making a comeback. DealBook contributor Callum Marsh takes us inside the evolving landscape of work-from-office fashion, and what he found is a full-blown generational reversal. Then Chris, a men's fashion writer, remembers the exact moment the sneakers he wore to the office no longer seemed cool. He was in his 20s then. All the older guys at the office started wearing sneakers with their suit trousers and sport jackets, Chris told Callum. So he opted to distinguish himself by donning a pair of buffed and burnished loafers. Chris is, by profession, geared toward staying ahead of the trends. But young people in workplaces everywhere are catching up to him. After years of flagrantly casual office attire that followed workers back to the office after the pandemic, young people are now increasingly going in the opposite direction, turning up for work in dress shoes. Earlier this year, Esquire described the trend as the loafer's big generational shift, describing how younger consumers were bypassing sneakers in growing numbers. And in January, the Times UK deemed 2026 the year of the loafer. Derbies and Oxfords have also unexpectedly become hip. At the same time, wearing sneakers to work, whether the upscale brands like APC, Common Projects, Zegna and Maison Margiela or the classic Adidas and Nike, has become a sign of something else entirely. It's the classic generational reaction. If your boss comes in wearing sneakers, the natural reaction is to do something different, Chris said. It's like what happened with jeans. This isn't just anecdotal. The market is reacting. In a January report, Bank of America concluded that the sneaker industry was entering a period of slowing growth and possibly decline, even downgrading Adidas, maker of Stan Smiths, by 2 notches to a sell rating. The surging interest in formal footwear fashions has simultaneously been a boon for both high-end luxury retailers and heritage brands with classic shoe offerings, like Allen Edmonds, the Wisconsin-based retailer. Nick Wooster, the brand's consulting creative director, said that they have absolutely seen a recent increase in interest in their handmade leather loafers and derbies among younger customers. Sneakers dominated for a long time, and they are not going anywhere, he said. But a great loafer or derby works in a meeting, it works at dinner, it works on a plane. Classic shoes tend to do that better than anything else. But the story is more nuanced than a simple sneaker-to-loafer pipeline. Brendan Dunn, the senior director of customer community and engagement at the footwear resale site StockX, told Callum that while we're definitely seeing a shift that has brought formal styles back to the office, it's a little more nuanced than just consumers giving up sneakers to go after loafers. In fact, he said, sneaker brands themselves are absorbing formal aesthetics, releasing more formal versions of their own hallmark shoes. Puma unveiled a variation on a classic Mary Jane in 2025, both Adidas and Nike have released low-profile ballet flats, and a number of the top sports brands have gone all in on patent leather shoes that skirt the line between sneaker and something more formal. I think the appetite for something different, and in many cases dressier, is real, Dunn said, but some consumers are still reaching for it through sneaker brands. He pointed to the New Balance 1906L, its sneaker loafer, as a case in point. StockX has seen more than 15,000 sales of the model since it was introduced last year. Though some critics will claim that the so-called snowfer was a flop. The New Balance 1906L, the snowfer, has become its own cultural flashpoint. Jacob Gallagher, John Caramanica, and Stella Bugbee of the New York Times Styles Desk debated it at length. Introduced last year during a Junya Watanabe runway show, the mutant mashup of an 80s running shoe sole and a slip-on loafer upper has been polarizing. Versions keep selling out, though production numbers are unclear. Detractors say it's just plain ugly. Gallagher himself admitted he bet on the wrong horse, having written not one but 2 pieces speculating on the Frankenshoe's appeal. The discourse around it reveals just how much this moment is about negotiating the boundary between casual and formal, not abandoning one for the other. Matt Halfhill, the founder and chief executive of Nice Kicks, a media company focused on sneaker culture, offered a cyclical perspective. Since about 2023, in offices all over America, we've had this quiet luxury, leather loafer, growing up thing, but he predicted that, as in the past, younger consumers would eventually return to sneakers again. What we're seeing right now is something we've seen before, he said. Yang Go, the senior style editor at GQ, gave Callum the post-pandemic context. People just wanted to feel a little more dressed and put together, particularly at the office. I think over the last half-decade or so we've seen more and more young men investing in loafers, derbies, and the like, Go said. So much so that in one story for GQ he recently edited, a writer said he was looking to give up his loafers. He'd noticed all the guys he was with were wearing matching shoes. The trend has become so widespread it's losing its distinguishing power, the ultimate sign of a trend's maturity. This shift mirrors what we've seen on Wall Street, where Lan Hongwin and Melody Zhang reported this summer on the return to the financial district. Men are reporting for duty in polo shirts. Women have stepped down from the high heels once considered de rigueur. Ties are nowhere to be found. Even the Lululemon logo has been spotted. The changes are superficial, but they hint at a bigger cultural shift in an industry where well-cut suits and wingtips once symbolized swagger. The sneaker withsuit look that once felt like a power move, the "I'm too busy changing the world to lace up Oxford's flex," has become the establishment uniform. And the new generation is doing what every new generation does, rejecting the uniform of the one before it. From footwear to the corner office, or rather, the algorithmic corner office. Sarah Kessler has a fascinating Q&A with Sam Pasupalak, the head of a startup called Skyfall AI that is building an AI model designed to operate as an autonomous CEO. Artificial intelligence wasn't quite cool yet in 2017 when Pasupalak sold his AI startup Maluba to Microsoft for $160 million. Now, AI is on every CEO's lips, and Pasupalak is not impressed. Everyone's so excited with the AI software engineer, he told Sarah. But it's so easy. For his new startup, Pasupalak and his co-founders, Sumit Pasupalak and Kahira Suleiman, have set their sights instead on something that is less defined and logical than programming, running the whole business. Their company, Skyfall AI, aims to automate the role of CEO. And it's currently shopping for a handful of software-as-a-service companies which offer software tools to customers via the cloud to test their technology. Pasupalak spoke with Sarah about the idea, and the conversation gets to the heart of what makes executive decision-making so stubbornly human. What makes automating a CEO difficult? Large language models, LLMs, will never be able to plan on a longer horizon because they're based on next word direction, Pasupalak said. A CEO does a lot of high-stakes decision-making under uncertainty. And has a lot of sample efficiency. Sample efficiency? The human brain operates at like 20 watts an hour. So it's 480 watt-hours in 24 hours. For an LLM, a big reasoning decision might require 1,000 watt-hours. I think that's extremely inefficient and expensive. So to circumvent these problems, Skyfall has two research focuses: world modeling and continued learning. Their first environment for testing AI at business building was the game Roller Coaster Tycoon. Now they want to buy businesses to use as experiments. How's that going? We are at the final stages of closing the first SaaS acquisition, Pasupalak said. We intend to buy a bunch of companies by the end of August. We're going to platforms like Acquire.com, TrustMRR, and others where you can buy micro SaaS businesses. And they have like up to a few $100,000 in monthly recurring revenue, because we don't want to spend more than $1 million in the experiments right now. Next year, if these experiments succeed, we're going to go to $10 million to a $100 million businesses. What will the process actually look like once they buy a company? We want to move from the co-pilot experience to a fully autonomous experience, like how I interact with my managers or my researchers or my employees. They are able to carry out the entire tasks end-to-end without me being involved. With the businesses we are acquiring right now, we don't want the employees to be there, or to have minimal involvement. So basically we should be setting the revenue goal, and the company should figure out, how do I run the go-to-market channels? What should be the exact customer acquisition channels that should be running? Do I need to do product enhancements if the sales are not going as fast as possible? It has to make all the decisions that a CEO would make for your specific startup. And so a lot of unsolved research problems, obviously, but that's the challenge. And what is left for humans to do? Human relationships within work can never be operationalized. I don't think AI can motivate employees. But will there be employees to motivate in the vision of this autonomous company? These first businesses we're trying to automate will have, let's say, only 1 to 3 employees or something like that. But this will democratize the technology so that everyone can be an entrepreneur. If you have an AI CEO that can do all your operational tasks, then almost everyone in the world can be an entrepreneur. That unlocks economic value and for the entire world at a much bigger scale than it is right now. It's a staggering vision and one that reframes the entire conversation about AI in the workplace. Not as a tool for workers, but as a replacement for the highest decision maker. The implications for labor, capital formation, and the very nature of the firm are profound. And they're testing it not in simulation, but with real businesses, real revenue, real customers. While Pasupulak dreams of the autonomous CEO, a different kind of organizational role is exploding in the here and now. Our quiz this week, when an assistant won't cut it, looks at the rise of the chief of staff. Executive assistants are old news. Now a growing number of executives want a chief of staff, with job postings for the role increasing 85% since 2020, according to Indeed. The difference? An executive assistant figures out what time something goes on the calendar, but a chief of staff figures out whether it should go on the calendar at all, said Clara Ma, founder and CEO of Ask a Chief of Staff, a networking platform that brings together chiefs of staff across various industries. According to a survey she conducted, how much does the position typically pay? The options, between $50,000 and $80,000, between $150,000 and $200,000, or between $250,000 and $300,000. We'll let you ponder that one. The answer is in the newsletter if you want to check. This tracks with what Jordan Holman reported in the Times about why so many CEOs are getting a chief of staff. When Richard Gelfand, the chief executive of IMAX, hired his first chief of staff, he went looking for a shadow, someone who could take notes during meetings and let him know what was up next. But over time, as IMAX grew more complex, expanding from 55 theaters to almost 2,000 across more than 90 countries, his chief of staff grew in stature. They're really invaluable in helping me think through what I want to say and what I want to accomplish and then how to execute it and helping me execute it, Gelfand said. Raphael Roessler, who was Gelfand's chief of staff until June 2025, recently worked on, well, the article excerpt cuts off there, but the trajectory is clear. As business complexity explodes, the need for a strategic thought partner, not just a scheduler, has become acute. Now, let's turn to our in case you missed it roundup, the signals that moved markets and shifted narratives this week. Employers cut 23,000 jobs last month. An unexpectedly downbeat jobs report, which also revised down gains reported in previous months, may buy the Federal Reserve more time as it considers whether to raise borrowing costs to combat persistently high inflation. But while the new numbers suggest a weaker economy than many perceived, which strengthens the position that rate increases aren't immediately necessary, forthcoming inflation data will play an outsized role in the central bank's decision-making. Colby Smith, covering the Fed for The Times, wrote that July's jobs report has reduced some of the urgency around the need for the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates, but it has not eliminated the possibility. Officials at the central bank instead appear much more sensitive to how price pressures are evolving, with heightened focus on next week's inflation report. Officials at the Fed have maintained for months that the labor market is not a primary driver of inflation, but that it is instead fueled by surging energy prices because of the war with Iran and other supply-related shocks. July's jobs report and the article excerpt trails off, but the signal is clear: the Fed is watching inflation, not employment, as its North Star. In AI policy, the Trump administration laid out a plan to scrutinize AI models. Its framework would review only closed models, like those from Anthropic and OpenAI, which do not publish their underlying code. It does not plan to review open-source models, which have computer code available to the public to download and modify. That could be a boon to companies like Meta that have used open source to create products that compete with the leading AI companies. David McCabe, Mike Isaac, Kate Conger, and Anna Swanson reported that in a meeting with top AI companies, White House officials said the federal government planned to review only certain types of AI models for potential security risks and not others. The voluntary review process will cover closed-source artificial intelligence models, but exclude those that publish the underlying code. The winners of this framework? Potentially Chinese AI models and open-source champions. The losers? OpenAI and Anthropic, at least in terms of regulatory burden. Google announced a major shakeup. Demis Hassabis, the chief executive of the Google DeepMind Lab, will become chair of the unit and chief scientist of Google's parent company, Alphabet. Kore Kavachouoglu will take over the daily operations of Google DeepMind. And Jeff Dean, Google's previous chief scientist, is starting a new AI company. Kate Conger and Cade Metz reported that the new job for Dr. Hasabi's was announced minutes after Jeff Dean, another key AI researcher, said he was leaving the company to create a startup with 3 other senior Google researchers. The changes atop Google's AI leadership represent a dramatic restructuring. And Cade Metz separately reported that Jeff Dean, Google's 30th employee, widely regarded as one of the most important figures in the history of the company, he played a key role in creating the global computer network powering its search business and was one of the company's early leaders in AI research, is leading the new artificial intelligence company with the backing of Google. For top Google AI researchers, forming a new startup, backed by Google, exposes the changing power structure inside Google and shows there's still plenty of venture money willing to back new AI ideas. Other big deals: Iran said it's nearing a deal with Oman to restore safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Yagana Torbati and Sanam Mahouzi reported that Iran and Oman are close to finalizing an agreement on an acceptable route for ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, according to state media reports. The two countries, which sit on opposite sides of the strategic waterway, have been in talks to find a formula to reopen the strait. Iran effectively closed the strait, used to transport a significant quantity of the world's oil and gas supplies, in retaliation for attacks by the United States and Israel this year. Iranian officials have insisted they will not give, the excerpt cuts off, but the geopolitical stakes are enormous. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on Tuesday that an agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz could be finalized within 24 to 48 hours. The reaction was swift. Government bond yields fell, while the S&P 500 soared to a new high. FIFA's president apologized for a plan to attract private investors. And the software company Airtable, which had a peak valuation of $11 billion, said it would sell itself for about $1.29 billion. A staggering markdown, a reminder of how far the private market pendulum has swung from the 2021 peaks. That's the week that was. A generation trading sneakers for loafers as a quiet act of rebellion. A founder buying real companies to teach an AI how to be a CEO. Chiefs of staff becoming the new executive essential. The Fed parsing a weak jobs report for inflation clues. The White House drawing lines between open and closed AI. Google reshuffling its AI brain trust. Iran and Oman negotiating the flow of the world's energy. And a unicorn sold for a fraction of its peak. Thanks for listening to DealBook. We'll see you Monday. If you have thoughts or suggestions, email us at dealbook@newyorktimes.com. And if you got this from a friend, you can subscribe at newyorktimes.com/dealbook. Have a good weekend.